I will pass now the floor to Professor Uygun AKSOY. So she served as a full-time professor, lecturer and researcher in horticulture at Ege University Faculty of Agriculture at Izmir, Turkey, until her retirement. She specialized in sustainable production systems, quality and safety of horticultural produce. She lectured at Mediterranean Agronomic Institute of Bari, master's course in organic agriculture, and at Hania, Greece, on sustainable agriculture. She is also working as a short-term consultant in FAO-funded or implemented projects in Central Asia, and she is the chair of the Turkish Association of Organic Agriculture Organization, as well as an advisor to the Aegean Exporters Association on organic and mycotoxins. Dear Professor AKSOY, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think everybody can see my PowerPoint in full mode, full screen mode. I will give a very brief overview of what is being done in terms of Turkish dried fruit sector regarding the sustainable future and the impact of the new Green Deal of the EU. And this overview will be a general one, but if there are some specific questions coming up from the audience, I'll be ready to answer them. In that respect, I'll briefly talk about the production and trade of the dried fruit in general, and focus on some major activities which contribute to the sustainability of the sector, like monitoring, dissemination, and research, and give some snapshots and finalize with a short conclusion. We all know that starting from 2019, I mean, the initial launching of the policies go back to previous years, but I think 2019 was a milestone in terms of considering and rethinking agri-food systems at global level. And in that respect, we had the issue of the climate change and a lot of discussions ongoing, some pro and some against. But then came the COVID-19 pandemics, and there were limitations faced, like the logistics or the ingredients or the flow of the, let's say, products. And then the EU New Green Deal gathered the whole EU, let's say, policy under one roof. And following that, there was the action plan on organic, which also aimed at contributing the achievement of the goals set in the New Green Deal as reaching to 25% of the cultivated land area converting to organic. And then the modification of the Common Agricultural Policy, and then the UN Food Summit and the COP26 discussions in Glasgow at least initiated and triggered discussions at various levels. And if we focus on the dried fruit issue, on one hand, we have the target of producing healthy, safe, affordable food, like in general food policies. We are facing climate change adaptation, which varies, let's say, a lot from one part of the country to the other. And the aim is to have a sustainable management of natural resources and to have some resilient livelihoods. If we come to the Turkish dried fruit production and go back to the farming practices, we see a lot of family farms which are having limited financial resources and small farm sizes, mostly rain-fed, not 100%, but mostly. And when it comes to the innovation systems, agriculture in general is lagging behind the other sectors, but within the agricultural innovation systems, the investment is rather low. And there are very rapid changes in not only policies, but also in legislative acts, in the private standards in Turkey, as well as in the EU, or specifically to the country. And when you have too many actors involved in the value chain management, the information flow is a little bit, let's say, slowed down. As you all very well know, Turkey is leaders in dried apricots, dried figs, and raisins. And in that respect, EU is the main trade partner. And within the total Turkish dried fruit exports, nearly 60% is destined to the EU countries, including the UK. And it may vary from, let's say, apricots, which go towards 42%, and for grapes, it's around 81%. With dried figs, it's around 53%. And when we have the focus of the Green Deal, we know that it will affect the European EU countries in general, but due to its further effects, all the trade partners will have an impact, including Turkey. And when it comes to the dried fruit production in Turkey, as you can see in these three maps, they are highly localized. The production of dried figs comes from Aydın and İzmir provinces in the west. Grape comes from Manisa, Denizli, and İzmir in the west. And Malatya is the major source for dried apricots. So agroecological conditions are having significant effects, but the other point of view is that due to its regional significance, they have a very, very big impact in the region where they are grown. So in that respect, in all the meetings, sustainability come up as a priority. We know that sustainability is a very broad term, and you can fill in with hundreds or thousands of pages of information. But in that respect, I'm going to just briefly show you what are the activities that are carried out by the Aegean Exporters Association, namely by the Dried Fruit Board, jointly with Ege University and few other universities, Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, Ministry of Trade, and civil society organizations. And in that respect, in Turkey, the Ministry of Agriculture has some thematic research institutes like viticulture, fig, apricot, or plant protection. And these institutes are also in the focus of the cooperation. What are the major activities that are carried out? If I focus on mycotoxins, firstly, data collection is the crucial starting point, because you have to know the incidence, the, let's say, frequencies or the levels where it, let's say, occurs. And in that respect, ochratoxin A has been in the focus of dried fig, grape, and apricot production systems, and aflatoxins mainly for dried figs. And in that respect, as we had presented in many cases, we had various research work which helped to identify the critical control points for the major factors. And as a consequence of these outcomes, the implementation stage focused on, for example, drying under tunnels, or distributing harvest nets, or preventing, let's say, plant pests, and in case of reduction of pesticides, focusing more on biological control, traps, and so on. And in that respect, extension work has been carried out by various, let's say, groups, but jointly with the Aegean Exporters Association. And in that respect, demonstration of drying tunnels were made, bait traps were distributed, net bags for caprification, drying trades and trainings, both in-house training as well as training of trainers and farmers. Training material were prepared. Since my colleague following my presentation, Professor Altındişli, will be focusing more on grapes, I'll be giving examples mostly from the dried fig and apricot cases. And in that respect, monitoring is something which started way back with the research work, but later the Exporters Association initiated the monitoring program, a regular annual monitoring program, where scientifically we contributed in identifying where to sample, how to analyze, how to, let's say, evaluate the results. And these monitoring programs were widened. For example, when the issue of ochratoxin A in apricots came up, we included dried apricots. So whenever there is a problem coming up from the value chain, at the end of the value chain, from the importer side, the programs were revisited and redesigned to address the issue. And then some following on-farm research trials were carried out. For example, recently, or a few years starting back, the harvesting nets are being tested as demo for the farmers in order to make an assessment of the height of the net, the, let's say, mesh of the net that is going to be used, and how it affects on the safety or quality of the product. Drying tunnels, as I said, were first developed for figs, but when they proved very successful and started to be widened within the region, the next step was to bring it to the Malatya region and to test them for dried apricots. Again, for example, one of the research work pointed out that sizing was important in terms of, let's say, or sizing was the unique criterion to identify or group dried apricots regarding their initial absorption capacity of sulfur. So starting with the past 3 years, let's say, on-farm trial was initiated first to size and then treat with sulfur dioxide in order to have more homogeneous SO2 levels in the final product. And as a preventive approach for the reduction of pesticides, for various, let's say, years, bait traps were distributed, and trays and training material were also distributed to inform the farmers. These 3 manuals were prepared for the whole production stage of dried apricot, grape, and figs, but with a focus on the major problem, like aflatoxins in figs, or pest problems in grapes, or maturation and pre-treatments in apricots. But the pests and diseases and the factors affecting quality were within the, let's say, focus of the preparing group. A lot of different brochures and thousands, and 10,000s even brochures and pamphlets were distributed on different aspects like ochratoxin or sulfur treatments, or let's say aflatoxins in figs. Regarding sustainability, one, let's say, practice of the Aegean Exporters Association, which I personally think is of utmost importance, is in every export or packing house, the bright greenish yellow fluorescent figs, which are known to be correlated to aflatoxin contamination, are removed and collected. There's a system that we together built with the Aegean Exporters Association. So they are collected, removed from the processing units, not to be mixed or not to be freely distributed in the local markets. And these contaminated figs are currently burned in a cement factory in order to prevent the environmental contamination of aflatoxins. For example, if you bury them in the soil, you will have the contamination carried onward. But there is a new initiative which started this year. The BGYF dried fruit is being tested first because they are rich in sugar, test as a raw material in biogas formation. So value will be generated, and then the byproducts will be further tested and re-evaluated. Organic is one of the, let's say, important aspects of dried fig sector. And actually in 1984-85, dried grapes and then dried figs were the first organic produce in Turkey. Still, they have a major, let's say, part. And the Ministry of Agriculture and the organic sector, including the Exporters Association and all the other stakeholders, gathered in October and then in December to discuss the problems and to prepare a policy document and a new action plan for 2021 until 2025. It's also, let's say, affecting the product range, and there are new products developed with the healthy diets which may address the organic, let's say, consumers. But there is also one challenge for the EU. For example, since the American market, domestic market for organic products is increasing very rapidly, there is a channel for it created a new channel for the Turkish organic production. Workshops and sector platforms after the COVID are, let's say, carried out. And as my conclusion, I would like to say that in order to bring solution, whether it's environmental, economic, social, or political, we need to have a cooperation. And this cooperation need to be at different levels. And in that respect, I think EU allocating funds for the implementation of the Green Deal with the Horizon Europe phase gives a new window of opportunity. And in that respect, there could be different, let's say, opportunities of trainings, joint trainings, together with different institutions, since the ultimate target of the whole group participating to this meeting is to provide a sustainable and resilient future for the farming community, traders, processors, exporters, importers, actually for all the actors of the dried fruit value chain at large. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be ready to answer any questions coming up. Thank you, Ms. Moderator.